Right then, another dull but important topic specific to mastering and uh, misunderstood quite a lot, I would say. This is the spacings within the realm of sequencing. What I mean is where tracks start and stop. Now, there's two different ways of looking at this. One is where the actual song, the music, the composition starts and stops, and there's where the audio starts and stops. So you might think, okay, this track's finished. I want a short gap, and then I want the next track to happen. But you might have some sort of noise, reverb, tails, fades at the end of the track. And you've got to make decisions about how you piece stuff together. And it really depends on what you're trying to achieve artistically. And it depends on genre and format. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. I think it's the best way to describe this, of some ways that you can get a bit creative with it. This is something that's, artists, producers, record labels and stuff can have a bit of fun with before it comes to the mastering. Or you can just say to the mastering engineer, you interpret it, send us a proof, and then let us know what you think. One technique we use quite a lot is people will do a mock-up of the album. So they'll just do a quick thing where they'll put it where they think it should be, and then you might have that as a reference in your session when you're putting all the audio together. And I like to do that before processing, because it means that I've got an idea of anything that gives us a better idea of the journey of the sequence of the material, the better decisions we can make about EQ, loudness, all that kind of stuff. So again, like I always say, the more prepared you are, the more confident you are. The more confident you are, the easier it is to communicate. Easier it is to communicate, the better the result of the mastering. First example I'm going to use is aggressive, loud, short songs in the realms of things like punk, hardcore, extreme metal, where the songs are short and it's live music. And generally in those situations, what you're trying to do is kind of emulate the experience of the live music, because that's the context in which we usually hear this stuff first. You don't usually hear, lots and lots and lots and lots of punk albums, like the ones behind me here, punk and hardcore and stuff, without being somebody who goes to the events, because that's kind of part of the appeal. It's a in-person music, really. So there's a couple of different ways of doing this. First of all, I try to avoid gaps that can sound unmusical. What I mean by that is that they throw you off with the beat, for example. So you kind of got to lock it into the beat, and that can be a kind of sequencing idea. Dun 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 bum, bum, and you sort of kind of count out the beats in your head. That can be a fun way of doing it, and that's what really tight bands do live sometimes. So it kind of makes you sound quite impressive. But there's also the idea of like, do you want to go to silence in these situations? You have a short break and then like digital black nothingness. You've then got to have a little edit either side, and it can, again, it's one of those things that sort of takes you out of the experience a little bit. So one thing that we recommend is to export that sort of music specifically with what we call room tone. And room tone is basically the sound of everything when nothing's being touched. So with loud, distorted guitar music, for example, there's actually quite a lot of noise. And that's something you're expected to hear. It could be little bits of feedback. You've got really loud, overdriven guitars, you're bringing a lot of noise up because you're compressing and clipping. And you end up with like little subtle bits of hum and buzz and stuff. And that's usually stereo because you've got two stereo guitars, and you've also just got like the self noise of all the equipment in the room. And it sounds natural to leave that in and crossfade it with itself, or to leave it until the downbeat of the next song. It's really subtle, but it is that sort of thing where you can listen to an album, and I did this as a teenager, think something's not quite right with this, and it's to do with the way that it's been mastered and the fact that it's not really been thought about in the context of how it's going to be listened to. Another good example is if you're changing between even like genres, or completely you're doing an about turn in tone, you kind of need to give the listener a bit of a breather. say you've just got a really big, loud end chorus, and the next track starts with a piano. It sounds really weird if you don't give the listener an opportunity to have a breath, and then wait for the next thing, and then introduce it softer. Going bam, 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 bam usually works well with lots of loud music. It can be the case that you can have bam, 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 bam on one part of the record, and then you might have a switch on the next part of the record. So you really need to think about this, and there really is no standards. People will sometimes say, oh yeah, I put 2 seconds between every track. And it's like, if you put 2 seconds between every track, what if the tracks are 30 seconds long? Then you've got lots and lots of 2 seconds added everywhere. And you will pick up on this as a listener. You know, there are no standards. You just need to be able to differentiate where the track starts and ends. Beyond that, there are no rules. There's nothing beyond rules of thumb, which I've described already. Another important thing is if you're going to be creating the music in a way that people need to be able to skip between tracks. So classic one is on a DJ EP, 12-inch EP, for example. You've got 4 tracks, or 2 tracks on one side and 1 track on the other. If you're mixing out of a track, you need a bit of space at the end. This is on vinyl specifically, I'm thinking, but it also applies to digital. I own a couple of records that I DJ with, where I've had to make a mental note because they just end on the last beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, end. They don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, end, and then next track, which is kind of gross to listen to if you listen to it on Spotify. But when you're DJing, that could be the difference between having the space to just let it finish. Maybe you just want to roll it out. Maybe the beat sounds good, people are dancing. And I've experienced this where I've played stuff in a club on vinyl, and the next track's just coming, you have to quickly pull the fader down. You know, it makes you look bad, it doesn't sound good, and it's just a matter of people not thinking about the spacings between tracks. My advice for anybody who wants to get like adept at this stuff is just to listen to a lot of albums of all genres that you instinctively know sounds good. You've enjoyed lots of time, you've enjoyed maybe walking in the car, you know, while playing video games or cooking or whatever, and it just feels right to you. It feels natural, the emotions as they change throughout the album work for you, and I bet you'll find that the gaps are very, very properly thought about. So yeah, not a particularly technical video this one, but it's kind of like, go away and learn this. You need to have a sixth sense for this stuff, because you'll start to do what I do, which is like, I'll just throw the sequence together and I'll just listen to the last couple of bars of one song, and I'll think, right, is this going to be a loud track next or whatever, and then I just instantly grab it, pull it, and I kind of know visually where it's going to be. So yeah, I'm going to try and find something slightly sexier to talk about for the next few videos, because this is kind of dry, but it's the sort of thing that I see people messing up, and like when I have people doing work experience or like interns and stuff, I have to sit them down and you really have to learn this stuff. So yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if there's any albums that you've noticed to do this really, really well or really badly. Put them in the comments, subscribe, and please continue to enjoy my videos. Peace.